point of everything.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What are we talking about today? We're talking about something very important. We're talking about building bridges between Muslims and between Muslims and other people. And why are we doing this in the first place is because, frankly, number one, Ramadan is coming, and it's important to have a clean heart coming into Ramadan. Number two is because this issue is of pertinent importance to the Muslim community and beyond. So, number one, a lot of people come to me and they say, okay, look, Mohammed, we've just become, practicing and religious. What group shall we join? What group shall we join? Who are the scholars of Islam that we should follow? It's a very interesting and important question, yeah? And how should we navigate our way through all of these different fatwa, all of these different documents and rulings and stuff like that? So hopefully today, inshallah, what we're going to be doing is giving some advice, some information about how that can be done and how we can reconcile differences. And with me is Sheikh Mohammed, who's the CEO of Salam. Inshallah, he's a Medina graduate and he's going to be giving his piece as well. So number one, why do we as Muslims, we are Sunni Muslims. Why are we Sunni Muslims? Because we find that is the Quranic where the Quran indicates to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا وَإِنْ تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا هُمْ فِي شِقَاقٍ. If they believe in what you guys believe in, then they're on the right path. And if they turn away from that, then certainly they are in transgression. Now, who are you guys that the Quran is talking about? آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ is referring to the companions of the Prophet. And in many different parts of the Quran, the companions of the Prophet, the friends of the Prophet, are praised. You'll find, for example, in chapter 9, verse 100, in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. And in Surah Al-Fath, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the end of the surah also says good things about the companions of the Prophet. And also talks about Him being pleased with them and them being pleased with Him. So this is clearly in the Quran. What is Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah? What is a Sunni Muslim? A Sunni Muslim, Ahlul Sunnah al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That you follow the way of the Prophet. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهِ. If you love Allah, then follow me and Allah will love you back. So following the way of the Prophet is well known. And when we say a Jama'ah, we're talking about Jama'at al-Sahaba. Primarily, and extensions from that. Sahaba meaning the companions of the Prophet. Because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us, خَيْرُ قَرْنِ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. That the best people are our people, my generation, the best generation is my generation, then the ones who come after them, and then the ones who come after them. So when we say Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we're talking about the Prophet, his way, and the way of all of the prophets before him, like Abraham and Jesus and Moses, and of the companions. Now, this is not to say that the companions can't make mistakes, because we know that the companions have made mistakes. That we don't say that they're infallible. We know that the companions are fallible. But collectively, the decision-making of the Sahaba is the normative Islamic Sunni position. And that's what we go to. So if we want to know about Islam, we go back to what the Sahaba said, what the companions said. We should be trying to find out what the companions said. The more companions say it, the more it's legitimized. Now, having said that, ladies and gentlemen, after the companions, you had people that came, called the Tabi'een, the people who came after the companions, and the Atba' Tabi'een, the ones who came after them. And you had the formulation of jurisprudential schools of thought. Many of them existed. Some say 80 or 90 existed, but 4 of them became very prominent, which is, the Maliki school of thought, the Hanafi school of thought, then the Maliki school of thought, then the Shafi'i school of thought, and then finally the Hanbali school of thought. Now, and that's in chronology, not in terms of importance, by the way, just in case anyone here is thinking, why did you put it in that order? It's in terms of chronology. So, the point is, those schools of thought represented the opinions of the Sahaba. They represented how the Sahaba thought, some of their differences. Now, the first point of consideration is this. As Muslims, Sunni Muslims, we say, if anyone follows any of those schools of thought, they're on the safe side. They're on the safe side. And we believe in taqleed. We believe in blind following. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and let me be clear what we mean by taqleed. I'm not going to make that a generic statement. We believe in it in some areas, okay? Not in all areas. In some areas of jurisprudence, okay? Because the thing is, when you go to a doctor and you sit down and the doctor says to you, look, what is your situation? You say, look, my situation is this. He does some kind of checkup on you, and then he gives you a result. He gives you some kind of treatment or something. So you respect the doctor, give them authority, and then they give you a verdict. Following the scholars in jurisprudence, in law, and this is where I put it in parentheses, we believe in following the scholars in jurisprudence, just like you would go to a lawyer. Because, look, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll come to this, what is a scholar, we'll come to it. In law, you can't do the work. What's the evidence of that? The Quran says, if certain thing came to them from al-amn wal-khawf, adha'u bih. وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ. That if they returned it back to Prophet Muhammad and the ones who knew istinbat, what's istinbat? Is the process of extrapolation. Then they would have been able to enlighten them about how to deal with the situation. So when it comes to jurisprudence, do not think that you have the tools as a layman, or I have the tools as a layman, to delve into the Quranic corpus or to the Sunnah and to try and make sense of certain delicate things. Now obviously, there are some things in the Quran and Sunnah which are very clear about prayer and fasting and so on. But we're talking about delicate matters of jurisprudence and fatwa. You cannot do that yourself, we require the scholars. Following anybody who follows any school of thought, which goes back to the four schools and by extension goes back to the companions, this is fine. No one should ever be told off for that. And if this opinion is mu'tabar, it is a legitimate opinion within that, then it's fine. Now listen, the question is, who are the scholars we should follow? And here's the answer. I'm not going to give you a specific answer. Ibn Mas'ud, he said, you know, if you had to follow someone, follow those who have passed. فَإِنَّ الْحَيَّ لَا يُؤْثَرْ عَلَيْهِ الْفِتْنَةِ. The ones who are alive, you can't be sure that they're not going to be muftatan, that they have fitna on them, that they're going to be disbelievers or leave Islam or something. And that's happened in Islam. Sahaba have left Islam. People, very close people have left Islam. Or they can be deviant after they have been guided. And that is all possible. So, who are the scholars? The scholars are those, in a nutshell, guys, who understand the process of jurisprudence. They know the usul. They know how to extrapolate from the nas. They know the nas, the text, the primary evidences. And many scholars have talked about the prerequisites of a scholar in their tracks like Shawkani and others.
Can I get one question?
One second. Yeah. Yeah.
They can hear me clearer.
طيب ممكن بعد طيب. So now we said, now let me break it down in layman's terms, all right? Who are the scholars? You have different gradations. So a faqih is a jurist, okay? So for example, right, you have a lawyer. Now what does a lawyer do in this country? They study common law, statute law, constitutional law, and then they can access that law. So they study the actual law, and then they study precedents. They study case law, what's called case law. And then they add those two things together, and then they come to conclusions based on their studies. Likewise, a faqih, he looks at the Islamic corpus, the Quranic corpus, he looks at the Sunnah, the Hadith, the authentic ones, and then you're able to make a judgment as to what is right and what is wrong. Now, alim is like a qadi, it's like a judge, because they can look at the daqa'iq al-umur, they can look at the sophisticated matters. The truth is, scholars are not concentrated in any one country in this world today. And it's unbefitting for us to say, no, the scholars are Sheikh kada wa kada wa kada, and they are the ones, and you have to listen to them, and that's it. No. And whoever says that to you is trying to monopolize. Yes, they are trying to monopolize Islamic jurisprudence for political or strategic gain. That's the reality, ladies and gentlemen. We have almost 2 billion Muslims in the world. There's no way there's only 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 scholars. That's not possible. Yeah, we have massive populations, like Egypt's got 100 million population, India 200 million Muslims or whatever it may be. There's no way there's no scholars in those countries. It's just not possible. It's like saying there's no doctors in that country. It's like saying there's no judges in that country. It's almost inconceivable at all. So the scholars are everywhere. And those scholars who specialize in certain fiqh matters, they should be respected. Now, Aqidah, which is creed, you can't do taqleed on this anymore. You can't do blind following. So you require now to go into the nas yourself, into the primary evidences yourself, with as much reference of the primary audience, the Sahaba, as possible. Because remember, the Quran says that they were the guided ones. So here, from an Islamic perspective, to break the long story into a very short discourse, number one, if you're talking about fiqh, which is law and jurisprudence, follow any legitimate scholar who knows the jurisprudence going back to the traditions, to the four schools and so on. That's fine. As for Aqidah, it requires you to now exert more and more effort into the knowledge of the actual primary text, respective to what the Sahaba said and so on. That's the general methodology. Now, one last thing which we had a discussion about some time ago, which has been a little bit controversial, but we'll bring it up, is now this issue of at-ta'awun al-birri wa-taqwa. Yes? Which is coming together in birr, which is good deeds, and taqwa. Yes.
I can't hear you. We are using.
Oh, okay. Sorry. And taqwa, yeah? Taqwa meaning piety. Now the question is, to what extent is this possible? The verse in question in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which comes twice in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 2, this verse is general. This verse, and in Islamic jurisprudence you have two kinds of things. You have general verses and you have specific verses. Now this is a general one. Yeah, so if anyone says now, at-ta'awun al-birri wa taqwa, it's actually only with our group, with our people, with this and that, they have to produce evidences of what you call a mukhassis, a specifier, to show why this is the case. Because Allah says, at-ta'awun al-birri wa taqwa. So really and truly, I can come together with a Christian or a Jew and do charity projects, and I haven't got a problem with that. And this verse is very important, not only for inter-Muslim relations, but intra-Muslim relations. And if I believe it's only in the interest of certain hegemonic powers, I do believe this, and there is evidence of this written in their records, to try and dismiss this very important principle of Islam, which is the principle of working together in that which is good and leads to piety. We can do that with Muslims. You can do that with a disbeliever, a Christian or a Jew. Certainly. Now some people will say, no, let it only be with our group. And you have some people saying, no, it has to be only, these are the characteristics of people that have these things. Now Sheikh is going to talk about the evidences of actually how this is not the case, and that some people, and I'll be honest here, sometimes it is the Salafis, sometimes it can be the Sufis, and sometimes it can be the Biralvis or Diaba, but we're focusing today on kind of Athari discourse. Why Hanbali Athari discourse? Because we're familiar with it, and the Sheikh, that's his training. And what we're going to do, try and do inshallah, and it's for everyone in every specific community to try and do the same thing. We're not saying we want uniformity, and I want to make this very clear, ladies and gentlemen. We're not saying we should all unite on the same principles. Let's all become Maturidi, or let's all become Ash'ari, or let's become this or that. No, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying let's all become this tariqah or that place. No one is saying that. And we're not saying, I'm saying what I'm not saying, so anyone doesn't misquote me, because some people have misquoted me. So I want to make it clear, right? We're not saying نتفق فيما اتفقنا عليه ونعذر بعضنا بعضا فيما اختلفنا فيه, which is the qawl apparently of Hassan al-Banna, which is that we will accept what we accept and we will excuse one another in that which we differ. We're saying that no, we won't excuse one another in that where we differ. There will be scholars that will come with academic refutations with the other scholars, and that is actually a good mark of a healthy civilization when there is that discourse, but it's done in a controlled way with the right people doing it, mu'ahal people who are qualified, not just anybody who has been given a tazkiyah. I have been given, everyone, Ali Dawah has been given, by the way, sorry to say, Ali Dawah has been given tazkiyah. Anyone has a tazkiyah. If you go to a doctor, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to a doctor, wallahi, put yourself in this position. You go to a doctor, and you say, what are your qualifications? He says, listen, my qualification, I've been praised by the big doctors. No, hold on. No, seriously. Think about this for a second. He says, no, I've been praised by the big scholars, by the big doctors. But have you gone through the training, my brother? Have you done the training, my brother? You know, have you gone into university and done the medicine training? No, I haven't done any of that. I've done some things here and there on YouTube. I went to Saudi Arabia 3 times. I read Bulugh al-Maram. I read Usul al-Thalatha, Qawaid al-Arba'a, maybe 3 or 4 books. And that's it, I'm ready. No. You wouldn't accept anything from that doctor. Likewise, a tazkiyah cannot afford a person the ability to do jarh or ta'deel, to do tabdi'a or takfir or anything. So just put that to the side for a second. Tazkiyah is almost worthless, sorry to say. I'm not saying it's totally worthless, but in terms of knowing a person's qeemah, their actual knowledgeability, it can be worthless unless it's done in conjunction with that. Some say, I have given you, you have permission to do this, teach or whatever. Someone saying, this guy's a good guy or something. It's not anything to me. So ladies and gentlemen, we're not saying that there should be uniformity, that we should all agree on the same thing, but what we are saying is that where we disagree, fine, we'll have the discussions, we'll have the discourses and so on. Where we agree though, or where we can work together or help each other, or help other people, charity work, or this and that, Muslims and non-Muslims, why not? I mean, wouldn't that contribute to a better world? Isn't that in line with the verse, وَتَعَوْنَ عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى? So here the Sheikh is going to go into more detail, inshallah. I'm going to put this for the Sheikh.
طيب الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So my dear brother Mohammed Hijab mentioned the ayah in which Allah Jalla wa Ala says وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. The first part of the verse everyone agrees on. Assist one another in good and righteousness and do not assist one another in sin and transgression. Ya ikhwa, as Muslims, Allah Jalla wa Ala has honored us by knowing Him and worshipping Him through Tawheed. That there is none worthy of worship except Him. He has honored us by making us one ummah. He has honored us by giving us one sacred purpose. And it's the sacred purpose that unites every single one of us here today. And that purpose is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in the hadith Abu Hurairah, Sahih Muslim, Al-Muslim akhul Muslim, the believer, the Muslim is a brother of the believer, another brother. A Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. He doesn't oppress him, he doesn't forsake him, he doesn't despair him, he assists one another. Kunu ibadallahi ikhwanan, be brothers to one another. And from this Allah Jalla wa Ala says, assist one another. Now look at the seerah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Look at how Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam embodied this ayah. He mentions in a hadith, Sheikh al-Albani mentioned it in Silsilat al-Hadith al-Sahihah, hadith number 1900, he declared it authentic. لَقَدْ شَهِدْتُ فِي دَارِ عَبْدِ اللَّهِ بْنِ جُدْعَانِ حِلْفًا. He said, I witnessed in the house of Abdullah ibn Jud'an, before he was a messenger, a treaty. مَا أُحِبُّ أَنَّ لِي بِهَا حُمْرَ النِّعَمِ. He said, if you give me red camels, I wouldn't want it. That treaty was enough for me. وَلَوْ أُدْعَى بِهَا فِي الْإِسْلَامِ لَأَجَبْتُ. And if I'm called to it in Islam, what would he do? He would accept it and answer. Who is this treaty with? It was with the polytheists, the pagans, the kuffar, the non-believers. And if he was called to it in Islam as a Nabiyyun Mursal, as a messenger, he would come together. For what? A maslaha, a benefit, a maslaha rajiha, an overwhelming benefit. Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, Shamsuddin Ibn al-Qayyim, who passed away in 728, he mentioned in one of his great works, it's called Zad al-Ma'ad. It's a book on seerah mixed with fiqh, mixed with tazkiyah, purification. He mentions in volume number 3, page number 303, he says, from the benefits of the treaty of Hudaybiyah, from the benefits of the treaty of Hudaybiyah, that the mushrikeen, the pagans, the polytheists, and who else? Who else? Ahl al-bid'ah, the people of innovation. And who else? And the people of sin and transgression. إِذَا طَلَبُوا أَمْرًا. If they ask you, they request of you, the Muslims, to come together in what? Something يُعَظِّمُونَ حُرْمَةً مِنْ حُرُمَاتِ اللَّهِ. They venerate and give sanctity to something from the religion of Allah. What does he say? أُعِينُوا عَلَيْهِ. They are to be helped upon this. Subhanallah, they are to be helped upon this. They are to be assisted upon. They are to be responded to. And who best exemplified this meaning than other than his Sheikh? Who was the Sheikh of Ibn Qayyim? Ibn Taymiyyah, Abu al-Abbas Ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani, rahimahullah ta'ala. He mentions, you find this Majmu' al-Fatawa, volume number 3, between page 270 to 277. And he talks about an incident that happened to him by a person called Ibn Makhluf. Ibn Makhluf, Ibn Taymiyyah says about him, he was a man who is fajir, an evil man, a liar. He was Ash'ari as well. He was Ash'ari in Aqeedah and theology. Qaleel al-ilm din. He had no religion. He was not practicing, as we were saying in our day and age. He's not practicing. He had little knowledge. And he caused many trials and tribulations upon Sheikh al-Islam, one after the next after the next. Ibn Taymiyyah says regarding him, whatever he does from khair, mahma amil min al-khair, whatever he does to extinguish his fitna, فَأَعْمَلْ مَعَهُ, I would do this. And again he refers it back to التعاون على البر والتقوى, helping one another on bir and taqwa. He exemplified this in his life. We always quote Shaykh al-Islam, but wallahi Shaykh al-Islam was never read as he should be read. He was never read as he should be read. And if that's not enough, then look at our mashayikh that we take from. The permanent committee, fatwa number 6,250, also fatwa number 6,280. I saw this with my own eyes. They were asked about who? The Shia, subhanallah, the Shia, Jama'at al-Tabligh, and Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun. They were asked about cooperating with these groups. What did they say? What did they say? Did they say these are the people of innovation, like some of our brothers, and khalas, we will not cooperate with them in absolutely anything? No, they said assist them, cooperate with them in whatever they are right in. Whatever they are right in, assist with them. And whatever they are wrong in, avoid it. And do ta'awun ala birri wa taqwa, unite upon righteousness, at the same time advise them. This issue, brothers, has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by two extremes. It's been hijacked by the extreme that don't assist with anyone that has a difference in aqeedah with them. Any dispute in aqeedah, they will not assist. And likewise, the polar opposite, it's just as Brother Mohammed Hijab mentioned, a group known as Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimun who say نَعْذِرُ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا فِي مَا اخْتَلَفْنَا فِيهِ. Whatever we dispute in, we'll ignore it. Don't worry, let's cooperate without any conditions whatsoever. And then in the middle, you have Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. You have Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah who upon ilm, upon the example of the Salaf al-Salih, upon the examples of our ulama, our mashayikh, they assist one another in the good and they warn at the same time from the evil. Al-Imam Ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. By the way, these fatwas were not signed by anyone. It's not just a random fatwa written. Who signed the fatwa? Sheikh Abdullah ibn Qu'ud, Sheikh Abdullah ibn Khudayan, Sheikh Abdul Razak Afifi, and at the head of them was the Sheikh of our Mashayikh, Abdul Aziz ibn Baz. And Abdul Aziz ibn Baz has another fatwa, and he was asked about a group from my country. I hail from Sudan, alhamdulillah. He was asked about...
Alhamdulillah, you should say Alhamdulillah.
I hail from Sudan, alhamdulillah. He was asked about a political movement that had a mixture of Sufis. Anyone who knows Sudan knows that the majority of the Islamic groups are Sufis there. He was asked about a group that has Sufis and Salafis. What should we do about this group? Should we assist with them? What did Ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala say? He says, وَحَارَبَةُ الْمَذَاهِبِ الْحَدَّامَةِ. He said, fighting the destructive ideologies. Fighting the destructive ideologies and things like this, min aham al-wajibat, he said. It's from the greatest of the obligatory acts. It is from the greatest of the wajibat upon us that we do this. And what should we do? Al-ta'awun ala al-birri wa taqwa. Unite upon the good and avoid the evil, and at the same time advise. The same advice was given by Sheikh Nasiruddin al-Albani. The same advice was given by Sheikh Muqbil ibn Hadi al-Wadi'i and our mashayikh brothers. This is the reality of this deen, brothers. What deen would call to a complete lack of ta'awun upon a maslahah, a point of benefit that unites every single person. How could you live? Wallahi, how could you live? I'm sorry. You don't bat an eyelid when it comes to the non-Muslims. But when it comes to your brother who differs with your aqeedah, like, no, I can't do anything with him. Yani, what aql is this? What aql is this? SubhanAllah. Look at Shaykh al-Islam, Mujallad, volume number 228. He gives you one sentence on how to deal with those who oppose you. How to deal with your brother who you have differences with. What does he say? He says, if there appears in one man, iman wa kufr, belief and disbelief. He says, sunnah wa bid'ah. He says that in him is sunnah and in him is bid'ah. And within him is what? Ta'ah, obedience. And yet he commits sins as well. I'm not saying him, but he commits sins as well.
Yes, I do commit sins as well.
How do we deal with this person? What does Shaykh al-Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah alayhi rahmatullah say? He says, istahaqqa min al-thawab wal-iqab. استحق من الثواب والموالاة على قدر ما فيه من الخير. He says you treat him how? You treat him according to the bid'ah that he has. You give him love and allegiance according to how much khair he has within him, according to the goodness that he has within him. That's how you interact with this person. You don't just knock him off if he has one bid'ah. Look at the Salaf brothers, subhanallah. Sufyan al-Thawri, he was asked about Yazid ibn Thawr ibn Yazid al-Kala'i, and he was a muhaddith. What should we do? Should we take his hadith? At the same time, he was known to be Qadri, someone who denied the Qadr, the predestination of Allah, al-Mubtadi' he was known to be. What did Sufyan al-Thawri say? He said, "Khudhu min Thawr, take from Thawr. Wattaqu qarnay, but be aware of his two horns." The word Thawr in Arabic means ox or bull. He said, take from Thawr, but be aware of his two things, his two horns. Aban ibn Taghlib, al-Dhahabi rahimahullah ta'ala says about him, he was known, he said Shi'i Jald, he was a Shi'i, a clear-cut Shi'i. What do? Khalas, we don't take a hadith from him? No, take from him, narrate from him, because we have his sidq, we have his honesty, but his bid'ah is upon him, it's not upon us. And with his brothers, let's call our brothers who we dispute with. Let's come together. Let's come together in a brotherly, a compassionate way. Just as Allah Jalla wa Ala gave us this unique unity amongst us. If you dispute, let's come together in a nice way. Let's discuss these issues. We love one another for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether we agree or disagree. Subhanallah, Al-Imam Ibn Abdul Hadi, he was once debating with Ibn Qadi al-Jabal. And Ibn Qadi al-Jabal was an angry man. He knows gets angry very quickly. And so he spat in Ibn Abdul Hadi's face. And you know what Ibn Abdul Hadi said? He said, he wiped and he said, it's tahur, it's pure by the consensus of the believers. You're still my brother, you're still my brother. Let's come together and discuss these issues. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبد الله ورسول نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Takbir! Allahu Akbar! Finish?
Content over everything from your melody. Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen. COE. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky YG. I just listen to COE. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. I don't even listen to Sky, man. Man, just listen to COE. Man, just listen to COE.
On the eve of Ramadan, because we are not so far from it, and Ramadan is